The morning started like any other, with excitement bubbling in her chest as she clutched the bouquet of white roses. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. She had picked out her best dress, the pale blue one that made her feel confident, and headed to the civil registry office where her boyfriend was waiting, or so she thought when she walked through those glass doors. Her heart was full of dreams about their future together. They had been dating for 3 years, and he had finally agreed to make it official. She imagined their small apartment, maybe a dog, weekend brunches, and eventually kids. But life has a cruel way of shattering dreams in the most unexpected moments. There he was, standing near the registration counter, but he wasn't alone. Next to him stood a woman she recognized immediately, his colleague from work, the one he had mentioned casually over dinners, the one he said was just a friend. They were laughing together, filling out forms, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back, the same way he used to touch her. Her feet froze. The bouquet suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She wanted to scream, to run, to throw the flowers at his face, but instead she just stood there, watching the man she loved register his marriage to someone else. When he finally noticed her, there was no guilt in his eyes, just mild annoyance, as if she was an inconvenience he had forgotten to deal with. The other woman smirked, flashing a diamond ring that probably cost more than 6 months of rent. That's when the truth crashed down like a tidal wave. He had chosen wealth over love. He had chosen status over their shared memories. He had chosen her over everything they had built together. Somehow she found herself outside, gasping for air, tears streaming down her face. The bouquet was still in her hands, mocking her with its pristine beauty. She wanted to throw it away, to destroy something the way her heart had been destroyed, but then she saw him. He was sitting on the steps outside the building, dressed in worn construction worker clothes, covered in dust, his face buried in his hands. Even from a distance, she could see his shoulders shaking. Another broken heart, another casualty of love's cruel games. Without thinking, she walked over and sat beside him. They didn't speak for a long moment, two strangers united by betrayal, sitting in shared silence. Then, almost impulsively, she handed him the bouquet. He looked up, confused, his eyes red and swollen. Something wild and reckless stirred inside her. Maybe it was the pain, maybe it was the desire to show her ex that she didn't need him, or maybe she just wanted to feel like she had some control over her life again. She heard herself saying the words before her brain could stop her. Would he marry her instead? Right now, right here, in this very office where she had just been humiliated. He stared at her like she had lost her mind. Perhaps she had. But when she explained what had just happened, when he shared his own story of being dumped for someone wealthier, something connected between them, two people with nothing to lose, two people tired of being treated as less than, two people ready to make an impulsive decision that would change everything, and just like that, they walked back inside together, strangers becoming spouses in the span of an hour. She didn't even know his full name when she signed the papers. He introduced himself simply, with a common name that meant nothing to her, just another construction worker trying to make ends meet, just like she was just another office employee struggling with rent. The irony was almost poetic. She had been left for someone richer, and here she was, marrying someone who appeared to have even less than her ex. But somehow it felt right. It felt like the universe giving her a chance to choose love over money, even if it was with a complete stranger. The first few days were awkward. They moved into her tiny apartment because his place was apparently even smaller. He would come home covered in dust, exhausted from construction sites, and she, would make dinner from whatever cheap ingredients they could afford. They barely knew each other, tiptoeing around their new reality, sometimes wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. But slowly, something beautiful began to bloom. He was kind in ways her ex never was. He remembered how she liked her coffee. He left little notes before heading to work. He never complained about their situation, always staying positive and hardworking. He treated her with a respect and gentleness that made her feel valued for the first time in years. What she didn't know was that every time he left for work, he was actually managing a business empire. The dust on his clothes was carefully applied, the worn boots were a costume, the humble demeanor was real, but the poverty was not. He was, in fact, the sole heir to one of the wealthiest families in the country, someone whose name appeared in business magazines and society columns. He had disguised himself to escape the superficiality of his world, tired of people who only saw his bank account. When his girlfriend had left him that day for someone even wealthier, not knowing his true identity, it had broken something in him. He wanted to be loved for who he was, not what he had. And now, here he was, married to a woman who had chosen him at his apparent lowest, a woman who made him cheap dinners and didn't complain, a woman who smiled at him like he was enough, just as he was. Every day he meant to tell her the truth. Every day he fell more in love with her authenticity, and every day the lie became harder to maintain. The truth, of course, would eventually come out. Secrets always do. But for now, in their tiny apartment with mismatched furniture and barely enough money for groceries, they were building something real. Something that started with two broken hearts and was slowly becoming something neither of them expected. Love, as it turns out, doesn't always arrive in the form you expect. Sometimes it comes disguised as a dusty construction worker on the worst day of your life.